Hi, I'm Saremy of So Live and So Patterns, and you are amazing because you are a Patreon patron. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'm hoping that more and more I can provide some free patterns for you guys and some dedicated sewing videos on how to make them like this one. Well, we're making the wallet today, and I just want to give you a brief overview of it. It's got an elastic closure, really easy, so there's nothing fussy about that. And it has the zippered coin pocket right here, so your change stays safe. You can open it up. You have 6 card slot pockets, and you have 1 clear ID pocket as well, unless you choose to use fabric. It's got a billfold right here. And one note about the fabric, I wanted to show you the way to cut this out is either to not worry about the direction of the print except in one respect, or to really fussy cut it. So you can see on mine, I stitched these houses on there. And when the flap is closed, it's right side up to us. Same with the coin pocket here, the houses are right side up. And same with the back of the wallet here. But the back of the wallet typically can, your wallet's being held all different directions. But if you open it up, you'll see that these houses are all different from each other. So the curved part and the coin pocket are both facing that way, and the back is facing this way. So the wallet I'm going to sew today is 1 piece of fabric, and it is directional, so you can see what it looks like when it's all finished and how the print looks on the back. Okay, so here we go. So here's our materials. You need 6 of the card slot pockets. On this one, I'm choosing to do 2 different fabrics, so it's easier to see which pocket is which. Here's your billfold fabric, the lining of the wallet, so the inside. Here's my outer piece, so it is directional. Just make sure when you cut this, even if you're not going to fussy cut it, that you at least make the curved side right side up. So make sure you lay your pattern piece on the fabric like this. You need a 9.5 inch piece of elastic, 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch, anything in there, something easy to use. I really like the braided. This is a 5.5 inch piece of zipper, and it doesn't matter what kind of zipper you use, as long as you can sew through it on the ends, or you can navigate around the teeth with your needle. You need your vinyl pieces. There's one that's angled, so this end right here is taller than this end, and it's that way so that it's easy to get your license out of there, whatever you choose to put in there. And if you have a right or wrong side to your vinyl, make sure you cut this piece right side up then. Mine does have a little bit of a texture, and in general, I really prefer the matte or non-glare or frosted vinyls because they do cut down the glare. They're easier to see through. They look a little nicer in my opinion, and you can find this at somewhere like Joann Fabrics. I like the 12 gauge weight, but anything you prefer to use. You can use scraps from something else if you like, or no vinyl at all. And then you have your coin pocket as well, which is a symmetrical piece. You need a piece of bias binding. I cut mine at 1 3/8 inch wide. And then you need your stiffener piece, which is the same pattern piece as either your outer or your lining pattern piece. All right, let's get sewing. So first off, we're going to start with binding our clear pockets. So this is the ID pocket, and we're only binding the angled side of it. And I'm going to start on the back, right side to wrong side of the vinyl. So right side down with the binding. 1/4 inch seam. And I bring it to the top, fold it just past my original stitch line there, and I stitch it down. No one is ever going to see the back of this, so it's a great way to practice your binding skills. On the coin pocket, you're going to do both long sides. So we're going to put this again right side down on the back of the coin pocket. And do the other side at the same time. All right, and then you're going to turn your binding to the top Fold it just past that first stitch line and edge stitch it down. All right, one more. All right, and so now you're going to take your zipper. It can close or open either direction, just depends. And you're going to slide it right under your coin pocket so that it doesn't go past the binding. So you see how the black shows up. You don't really want that to happen. So we're going to line it up. And I don't switch out to a zipper foot, and I run my presser foot alongside the zipper coil. When I get to the zipper head, I'm going to have to lift up my foot, slide the zipper head past it, and continue sewing. It's a good reminder, always stop with your needle down no matter what. It's like having another hand holding your work for you. All right, so now we have our coin pocket, our ID pocket. I'll trim this one up here so it's ready to go, and we'll set it aside. So we have our outer piece here with our coin pocket, and you're going to line up the zipper tape to the short straight edge of this outer piece, and you're going to, you can pin this or clip this if you like, and you're going to stitch straight across the edge of the binding. You can tack your zipper down in a couple spots if you want. I will here. And now we can set this aside. All right, now we're going to hem our pockets. I've already ironed mine at a 5/8 inch hem allowance, so it just needs the hem stitch. If you have a serger, you can just serge along this raw edge, fold it down and stitch it down. If you want a narrower hem, trim off about 1/4 of an inch, and then you can turn it 3/8 down and hem it. But I created the pattern so that you don't have to have a serger at all. We'll just use a roll hem here. So I folded it down and ironed it at 5/8, and now I'm going to fold it again and edge stitch it. And I'm not changing my thread color, so you will see my stitches. Sometimes that kind of helps see the opening of a pocket if you're having trouble because it's dark or it blends in with the pocket next to it. I'm just doing it as a time-saving thing here. So I have my 3 in one fabric and 3 in the other, and I'm going to alternate my pockets so it's really easy to see. Got the map and then the batik. Two more. You can chain them together like this. And then cut them apart. Okay, so we have 3 and 3. Now we're going to sew them onto the billfold. I'm actually going to sit here and make this a little cleaner here too. You can see these little threads like to suck back onto my work. So let's clean those up now while I can see them so easily. At least get them towards the seam allowance. This is why I don't back tackle often, because it makes it even messier. Depends on the fabric, depends on the project. All right, so there we go. And let's see our maps here. Just take that starting thread, pull it over, get it into the seam allowance. There we go. Okay. Now, this is probably the only stuff that's a little bit confusing to explain, but it's going to make perfect sense, I promise. So when you start with your pockets, you're going to start with them, there's going to be 4 at the top and 2 on the bottom plus the ID pocket. And you're going to start sewing them with the fabric right side up. You're going to line up this raw edge to the notch, not past it, but to it. And you're going to stitch it down 1/4 inch seam. Do the same thing with your next pocket. I'm alternating, obviously. Now sometimes I focus on these being parallel to each other rather than it lining up perfectly here. Just in case my cutting or my ironing or my sewing was a little bit off, I can kind of cover it up at this point. All right, so on the bottom one, you're gonna put it right side down and you're gonna still line up that raw edge to the notches and still stitch it at a 1/4 inch seam. This way your bottom pocket has a clean finish because that's the one that shows. All right, now you're gonna just stitch them all down. You can press them as well. You soon won't be able to press your wallet once you get your vinyl on there, so make sure you take care and do that now. All right, so same thing. We only have 2 down here, so we're using the same notches for both pockets. So this one gets right side up, stitch down, and this one is face down, lined up to the same notches, 1/4 inch seam again, and then it goes up, just like that. Stitch it down, just like that. And now our ID pocket goes right on top. Now you can tell, like you can see the seam of my pocket under there. And I just kept this welt really easy to sew. So if you want, you could make this bottom pocket about 1 inch longer and then just stitch across right there so that your card doesn't get like lost at the bottom of the pocket. But I'm gonna tell you from experience that your ID is going to, or whatever you put in this pocket is gonna cover up that seam. All right, so just line it up on these 3 edges here. Tack down your vinyl. And a note about sewing with vinyl, if you can just keep your machine in contact only with fabric when you're sewing on your vinyl, you should be fine. If you ever have to come in contact with the vinyl with your presser foot, then I recommend putting a piece of tape on the underside of your presser foot. You can use like a soft side of the nail file and just kind of rub off all the excess tape sticking out. You can use tissue paper or you can use a Teflon style sewing foot that you can buy separate for your machine. I have one of those and I'm not using one though. So, all right, so now our billfold is ready to bind. So we're gonna start from the back like I always do. Right side to wrong side. 1/4 inch seam. Make sure all those little raw edges are poking towards the raw edge of the seam. So all your threads, any bits and bobs, make sure they're all going towards the seam. All right, and so let's trim this up so it's nice and even. Any of these little extra pieces poking out. And now you're gonna turn your binding to the right side. You can press it if you like. You're gonna turn under this edge and fold it just past that seam and stitch it down. Now this is where I like to kind of tuck it in here in this weird curved corner here. I'm gonna walk my machine around with lifting up the presser foot as I get there, and I'm gonna use my awl to hold down the binding exactly where I want it to be stitched. I kind of really pull right here. It really wants to crumple towards the front and then it gets a little wider. We're gonna stitch that down a little bit and tame it in a second. So make sure all these little threads and things, those are the edges I was fixing, are all pointed toward the seam allowance. And just hide it all inside there. The neater you are now, the less work you have to do at the very end. All right, so now here's our billfold. No one's gonna see this side. And you can see I just use a regular piece of quilting cotton. Between all these pockets, the binding here, it's setting on here, it's pretty stable. You don't really wanna get too much thicker. All right, so lay your lining on the stiffener. Make sure there's no threads on the surface of your stiffener. You will feel those through. If you have a pale or light colored lining, you might see it through and you can't get it out. All right, so you're gonna line up your billfold. There's a notch here and a notch here on your lining, so just line it up inside there. And we're going to stitch down the billfold. You can go as far as you like, but I'm going to stop about probably right here. I've experimented with making this squared off and stitching up higher, and there doesn't seem to be any advantages or disadvantages. So I kind of rounded it to make it a little easier to bind so you wouldn't turn a corner. So I'm going to kind of pull this straight a little bit, flatten it the best I can, make sure I'm not pulling it away from this edge here. Just go straight up. Remember, I'm going through the lining and the stiffener. And now I'm just going to tack it down here a little bit, just like that. All right, so now I have all right, so now we are ready to assemble our wallet. Last seam, make sure there's no little threads hiding back here. You don't want to feel that. Get rid of this one and this one. Lay it right on top. Get your elastic, and you're going to fold it in half. Line up those raw edges right on top of the notch right there, and stitch it down inside the seam allowance. Don't get sloppy here. Make sure you're fully inside the seam allowance, because I'll tell you a little bit more later why that's so important. If you want to tack this down in a couple more spots, go for it. Just so that all your layers now are one. All right, now we're ready to bind. Let's hope I have enough binding. All right, so we're going to fold back the end. I found that starting right here in the middle of the billfold on the card slot side, not the opening of the billfold side, is the best place. Having a little start and stop right here where you're trying to get your hand in and out of the pocket does kind of create a problem later on when you're using it. And it's just nice to have a nice smooth opening right here. This is also the back of the wallet, you know, the back right about here. So we're just gonna stick it right here. If you're going to add a label to your wallet, you might want to make sure you do that before you do this step. All right, so all of my threads, raw edges are all towards the raw edge and the seam allowance. Now we're going to sew this down, 1/4 inch seam. I'm pulling it a little bit. Start paying attention to where your elastic is, because you want to make sure this piece is straight, like straight down the center of the wallet. You don't want it to get accidentally pushed by your presser foot or your feed dogs at an angle. All right, so now we're coming past this tack seam. Make sure you're including the tack seam in the seam allowance so it's not going to show. Just keep going. If you need to lift your presser foot and walk around the edge, go for it. Make sure none of your pieces are folding in on itself. Go all the way around here. You can pivot at the corners or you can round your corners. My zipper always gets caught in my feed dogs like that, so just be aware that can happen. All right, so now I'm going to slide the zipper head past the presser foot. Keep going. I'll round this corner. I did a 90-degree angle on that one and pivoted, but we'll just kind of try and round this a little bit. If you end up making a lot of these and you like rounding them, I would just round the corners of the wallet and start off that way. It'll be a little easier. All right, so we're going to take the binding up to this folded back edge, back stitch there, and just trim it off. And now we're going to trim all of this messy bit here. Make sure we're maintaining the 1/4 inch seam. You don't want to get narrower, and you don't want it to be wider because your binding won't be able to fit. But you definitely don't want it to be narrow because you don't want it to be empty inside the binding and kind of, you know, slack there. It'll be a much nicer finish if there's fabric inside the binding filling it all up. All right, so this curve is sometimes the trouble part. Make sure your curve is as symmetrical as possible right here. And just look over your edge there. Okay, so now you're going to fold this towards the right side. Just like this. Because I was kind of pulling the binding as I was sewing it, it naturally wants to kind of curve over the top and lay down. All right, last seam. So this is kind of a lightweight quilting cotton, this binding that I used, and it's pretty easy to work with. If you're using anything thicker, you may want to start about right here, like this, and get started, rather than starting on the spot that you created as the end. All right, so I'm gonna start back there. That way it's in my machine, the needle's holding it down, the presser foot's holding it down. It's like giving me an extra helping hand. And I can get this all situated, get my sewing legs underneath me, and then I can continue on. Now I can see my stitching there, but that's okay. The bias is stretchy, and I can pull it over and cover it up. Now if your fold is just past that first stitch line that we just sewed, and your stitching is to the right of that stitch line, everything's gonna look great on the other side. It's that simple. So make sure your binding covers up past that first stitch line there, and your needle lands to the right of that stitching. That way you're always on the binding on either side. All right. I'm just kind of walking it around this corner. And I kind of have to stretch it, and then I kind of ooch it on there so that it's right on top of itself. The curves kind of want to tell you to do otherwise sometimes. I'm going to get my zipper head out of the way in just a second. There we go. Now I get to this corner and I fold it down, kind of pull it snug. I can pull really hard with my machine. I have the presser of the pressure foot pretty hard. All right, getting down to that corner. If anything, when you're sewing around your corner, I would clear a little bit away from the folded edge of the bias on these corners. You're more likely to land on the binding on both sides if you do that. But when you get up here near the elastic, I want you to sew so close to the edge of your binding. That way, when the elastic is being used and pulling open, you do not see any of the stitches underneath. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So here I am at the top. Make sure my elastic is straight down. And I want to stitch right on that edge, even if it's going to show a little on the other side. Okay, so I'm making sure this is all nice and covered up there. Here we go. We're at the beginning and we're done. So the reason I really want you to focus on that spot being sewn is when your elastic is pulling apart there, if you stitch far away, you will see underneath the, this will pull back the binding and you'll see under there. All right, here we go. Not bad. All right, let's fold it up. Here we go. Okay, so I used that all over print for one piece on the outside, so you can see my globe is right side up here, a little bit not centered, and then it's upside down right here. Upside down, I mean, I know the globe can be looked at in many different ways, but it really doesn't matter too much. I've done this also with this little dog wallet here. And even though they're really noticeably a different direction on the back, when you're holding your wallet, you're really holding it all different ways. So you just want to make sure this little flap right here is your primary focus on what's right side up. Remember, you cut it out like that. All right, well, good job. I hope you have fun making these and you find them useful. And I hope you show me what you make and you tag it on Instagram or similar with SS Wallet. I would really love to see it. So bye, I'll see you in the streams. Thanks so much for joining.